Good morning, everyone. This is CASAS National Summer Institute 2021, Day 2, TOPS Pro Enterprise TE Tips and Tricks. My name is Janice Farah. I'll be your host today, and I've also got 3 special guests, the Black Belt team from the TOPS Pro Enterprise Technology Trainers. And we'll do introductions in just a moment. But first, let me kind of go through a little bit of housekeeping and reminders. This presentation does have handouts. It's helpful, I think, to have it. These are links that include videos that we've prepared, a little bit more Hollywood style, and documentation on CASAS.org that you can use to study later. Today's session, we're going to conduct it in a kind of a fun format, a little bit more interpersonal, along the lines of what we do during a summer institute in general, if we were all together in person. So we'll be going through a couple of different demos. There'll be another little PowerPoint that Fabiola prepared, etc. Okay. This is our agenda. Using the TOPS Pro Enterprise start page, we think that's something that's a tip and a trick that maybe you haven't fully explored yet. So we'll get into that. Also, one of the best ways to see your data is looking at it in the various listers, and you can adjust the columns and do all kinds of magic in there. We're going to go over some of those tips. Fabiola is going to give us a discussion of a great way to delegate just a portion of TOPS Pro Enterprise to your teachers. And that's kind of a very handy thing. It involves using access groups, and she'll get into all that with an overview and a demo. The 4th item, the brand new report that we think is very powerful. It's called the Ad Hoc NRS Crosstab Report. And that's very valuable. Lydia will take us through that. And then finally, we're hoping we've got all the right timing done. We'll cover the navigator and some of the drill downs inside of reports, so that when you see a report and you get the data, you can use your mouse and right click on various places in the reports and actually drill in to the data. All right. I think it's time for some introductions from the top. Lydia, I would like you just to say a few words about what you do in adult ed and what's your background today.
All right, my name is Lydia. I'm with Grossmont Adult Education, which is part of the Grossmont Union High School District down here in Southern East San Diego, so Southern California. I've been with adult education for roughly 20 years, and I am the data manager for 2 different agencies, our correctional education program, and then of course our standard adult education program.
Great, thanks. Fabby.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yes, Fabiola Epperly from Sweetwater Union High School District here in the South Bay of San Diego, very close to the border. I've been with Adult Ed for give or take 12 years, and I'm the data manager for our division. Yes, nice to meet you, and thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. Delfino.
Yeah, hi, my name is Delfino Murillo. I am the office manager and data manager for Redlands Adult School, to shout out to all of those who multitask every day. And I'm from Redlands, just a little bit north of these 2 ladies. And I've been a CASAS tech trainer for about 3 years now. And I've been doing the adult ed world for about 5.5 years now.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm Janice Farah, program specialist and a technology specialist here at CASAS. I've been here 2 years. Before that, I was a data manager for Placer School for Adults up here in the Sacramento area. All right. First up, we're going to let Lydia demonstrate the TE start page.
And I'm sorry, Janice, to interrupt you, but we have Luke, which a lot of our...
Oh, right, forgive me. We have Luke Philly, who formerly from Kern, but now we've adopted him at CASAS. We've dragged him aboard. And so if you happen to call tech support extension 2, you'll start getting Luke Philly from time to time answering your questions. So welcome, Luke. Thank you so much for being here. He's in the chat behind the scenes, but without him, it would be very difficult to do this presentation. Okay, I'll stop sharing, stop talking, and let Lydia rip. Thank you.
All right, let's get into the start page. So the start page, for some of the advanced users, sometimes we have a tendency to skip over the start page, but there is all kinds of great things on the start page. So going over left to right, there are, especially for newer users, there's this entire section of how-tos. If you want to, starting at the top, open a demographic lister, you just click on it and it opens right up to the student lister. And then you're able to do your searches and go straight through there. And then you can go straight down into all of the other, if you want to go into the program years listers, go into the program enrollments listers, and go all the way down. And I believe in one of the future builds, there'll be a scroll bar here. So that'll help us out if we're working on a laptop, which is what I'm doing today. So that'll be very beneficial. And then there's also this wonderful little pin right here so that you can scooch it over when you're finished with it, but it's always right there. Then you have your shortcuts that will, again, open up recent listers and your recent reports, which is also beneficial. So you have your state announcements, what's coming up, what's due. You have your CASAS announcements, and you've got what my favorite part of the start page is, your agency announcements. So we can see that there's already been one that has been set up. And to set up your own, you would just go into organization, announcements. We can see the one that has been already set up. Click on new. And then choose your container, whether it's at the agency level or the site level. And again, over on the start page, that would determine whether it's at the agency level or the site level. Put in your title, whatever you would like to say in your announcement. Make it fancy if you'd like, and then put in the expiration date if you would choose. This one happens to be set for publish immediately. That's where you would set, save it as a draft, publish immediately, and again, the announcement level, save it. And again, this is where it would show up once it's done. So you have a record of all of your announcements, and that's where it would appear. Let me move my box out of the way. Your alerts and notifications, which function like an electronic billboard from CASAS, all of your release notes are right here so that you can keep up to date with what's going on, so that you don't always have to go up into the help tab for the release notes, but they're right here and they're marked as read and what's new. So then again, you have your CASAS news down here so that you can see what's coming up, what's already happened. And again, there's a great screencast that Janice actually has done that's available on YouTube and I believe on the CASAS webpage as well, that goes into much more detail than what I've gone through on the start page. And that I believe is also attached to this tips and tricks. So if you're curious about any of this or would like to go into more detail, then I'd highly encourage you to check out Janice's screencast or YouTube video, and you will be blown away with all you can do on the start page. Janice?
Put the link in the chat. Thanks, Lydia.
Okay, great.
All right, next up, we were going to take a look at listers.
Excellent. Good morning. And again, thank you guys for being here. Let me share my screen. Excellent. So you guys know that we are getting to the end of the year submission report, right? And there's so much cleaning, there's so much that we need to look at. And if you guys are, well, if some of you guys are blessed and you have 2 or even 3 monitors, you know, sometimes that might help. One of the things that, you know, I would like to show you is how you're able to see multiple listers within the same screen. That way you don't have to open, reclose, and so on. So we're going to go really quick to student demographics, which is usually the one we first go to for everything, right? And you'll be able to see the lister. So there's this button on the right-hand side. It's called Pages. And here you have a few options. new horizontal, new vertical, open list here, and open all edit views here. So let's say we wanted to break this into two. We have the option of doing it horizontally or vertical. So now we have two, you could say two screens within one. And if I wanted to have these records, after you open them, transfer here, you would go to pages, open all edit views here. So let's say I wanted to look this class enrollments for this student. This would show me the class instance and all the information, attendance, and so on. I think that's a pretty cool way of being able to see without having to have 1, 2, 3, 4 listers. And sometimes, you know, your whole page and you forget. So this has this ability. Or you could also, let's close this. You can see it horizontal, if that's what rocks your boat, however you like. Same thing. If you want the records to open up in the bottom, you always have to make sure you select open all edit views here. Oh, I apologize. You have to make sure you're selected in the page before you do that. So let me close this. We go back and I want to show you that you're also able to change the width of these columns, which is another cool feature that, let's say you only need to see the name. You just have to hover over to see, and you can just do this, see this bigger. You can do more than two. Give me a second, why am I having trouble here? There you go. So you can have 1, 2, 3, as many as you would like, change the width of them, etc. Do the same thing vertically. So that's going to be very helpful during our last month before our report is due for July 15th. And one other thing that I would like to show you guys is schemas. I don't know if many of you, when you're opening up listers and each time you open them, there is, I apologize. Why am I having trouble closing? What am I doing wrong?
You can go ahead and hit the X, I think.
Yes, but it's still,
Pages close all,
you know,
not responding.
no,
Hmm.
I'm hoping that.
You know what? It's a function of the screen share.
It could be. Well, let me just show you. We're going to open up a new lister and hopefully, there you go. One of the things that every time you open up a lister, you notice that there's a default that CASAS or TOPS has set up for us, right? It always opens up this particular way. So every time you open, you want to modify it to the way you want to open it. So usually, at least for me, I want to see last name, first name instead of the full name. Let's say I want to see the ethnicity before the native language, before the ID, you know, however you like to see your data, you want that to open up every time you open up TOPS. And if you're not familiar, there's a way that you can save those particular listers in the way you want to open them. That way you don't have to do this every time. And this is called the schema. I don't know if you've ever heard of that name. And in order to save that, you would go into, after you have all your listers and the way you want them, you would go to more. I apologize, you know, I'm having some trouble here. I'm wondering if we can have maybe one of our techs share their screen and maybe I can drive.
That would be great.
I apologize that I'm
It
wondering.
happens sometimes when you go to full screen and you've got, hey, Lydia, do you think you have a moment?
Yeah.
To screen share and then Lydia,
Sure.
Lydia share and Fabi talk over. Perfect.
Yeah, no
I'm glad
problem.
A South says he uses schema all the time. So
All right, what would you like me to do, Fabi?
Excellent. If you don't mind opening up a demographics lister, student
Sure,
demographics.
sure.
Perfect. And just if you could do a last name, first name, and maybe put native into the third column. Just kind of whatever you want to play with. Last name first, a little lower. Lower, lower, lower. Two more. There you go.
Funny, when someone else is driving, we just can't. You want me to hide the name?
Please, if you want to hide the name
Cool.
and move, let's see, native language to the third column.
I have to move you, sorry. Move native language over. It's not letting me.
Okay. So then it might be one
Janice,
of the,
did you guys lock it?
Nope. Nope. Just,
let's see.
Oh, there it
you-
is. Ha
Yeah,
ha.
There you go.
it's a little tricksy with the,
Okay,
Got
so
it. Yes.
perfect. Let's say this is the way, thank you, Lydia. This is the way you would like your lister to look every time you open up your computer. So then let's save now. So we would go to more.
Yes.
Excellent, yours works. And there's this button called schema, right? So then you're gonna name it however you would like. For this purpose, we would say, right, my first name, SI for Summer Institute. And then we would save it. So if you wanted to close the lister now, please, Lydia. And now we would open up, let's say we come back a week from now or 2 days, so on, we open up our demographics. As you could see, the schema saved, right? So it opened up to the way you saved it. And if you wanted to reset it, you could do so. However, one of the things I do have to mention that this is done for your actual, it follows your machine. So if you log in in different machines, you would have to do this over for each particular machine. So if you go to the office and you're at home, then, oh, why isn't saved? Well, it's specifically saved, yes, to your user, but to your actual computer. So that's one thing that I would like to mention, because I hear people all the time, well, I have all these schemas and they're not showing. I'm like, well, you're in different computers. So these are some of the tricks that are going to help us when we're doing cleaning and throughout the year. I hope that, you get to use them. Is there any questions we can answer about these? Thank you for sharing, Lydia.
I've grabbed a couple of questions out of the chat and answered them
you.
already and thrown a few extra tips into the chat. Here's one from Tishelle, a suggestion or a tip that you can export the schemas and save them onto your new computers. Tishelle, do you want to unmute and share that for a moment?
Yes.
Certainly, I'm a big fan. I'm always customizing TE, as CASAS knows. And so when I moved from like one computer, like my laptop at home, to my computer at school, it drove me crazy because I would miss my listers or my schemas and my filters. So I would export them by going to more and then clicking on to schema, and then you go to export, and you can export out that lister and save it like to my Google OneDrive or to my Microsoft OneDrive, and then go to my other computer and then upload that lister from my OneDrive onto my new computer, and that will put the schema on my new computer by using the import function under more, because
Nice.
I like my schemas. I want my schemas to be where I am, no matter which computer I'm at. So I have learned to export them so that I have a copy of them, so I'm not redoing them if I move to multiple computers.
Wow,
I
that's
definitely have,
great.
I have schemas too that are for distance learning, and I bring those up when I'm thinking about things like, special programs equals DL and the distance learning minutes calculations. Excellent. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Fabi, I interrupted you.
No. Now that we have her on the line, you see, you learn something new. When you import them in, from the third, what file do you select?
Is it a zip drive, a zip file?
It's a zip file. So when you go to the schema, there's an option to save it, import, or export. And so when you export it, it exports as a zip file. And so you save that. And so when you go to another computer, you just take that, you just go to import and choose that same exact file, and it will import it into your new TE installation.
Excellent. That's great to know. Thank you. I appreciate it. I learned something.
No problem. Tips and tricks. Sharing is caring.
Excellent.
All right, we're doing well for time. Anybody else? Oh, could you email it? There might be documents on that on the CASAS website. If you search for schema, I don't have a link on the top of my fingertips, but anyway, next up is creating teacher functional roles. Fabi, do you have a PowerPoint you want to share with us on that?
I sure do.
Because-
So I'm here again with you guys. I'm going to go slow on this one. This is an exciting thing that we use at my agency. And I would like to share that with you all. Let me move this out of the way. Functional role setup. Perfect. You might ask why? Why and what for? Well, functional roles are used to give different access groups the ability to perform actions in TOPS, such as running reports, taking attendance for students, create entries/updates. Today, for this presentation, we will concentrate on the teacher access group. And the reason why we use functional roles at my agency, we believe that giving our teachers the tools to be familiar with TOPS, what it means to collect the correct data, to be invested in what we do as data managers is very important. And if we give them the rights to be able to do this on their own, they'll be more invested. So what we've done is we've given teachers the role to be able to run reports, take attendance for their students, run anything that they need at the time that they want to, without having to wait for anybody. And this is how it works. T has already, they have preset access groups in TOPS, as you guys are all aware, right? And in order to see what is there, you would go to Organization tab, down to Access Groups. And as you see, these are the presets that TOPS has for us: Admin, Basic, Teacher Access Enhanced. And some of you might see the Administrator and Proctor, Coordinator. There's so many different access groups, right? What we're using today is the Teacher Access Enhanced. And if you wanted to know what this actual access group had as the rights, you could just scroll down on the page and you would be able to see that teachers for this group would have access to look at all these list records, view, they could do updates. However, do you see that on the delete column, nothing is marked? So there's no fear for teachers to go in and delete some of your data. We as data managers, right? We seem to be overprotective of our baby, right? TOPS is our everything and we don't want anybody to touch it. But there's no harm in this. Teachers are just able to run, see, input without having to delete. So that's one of the things that I want to mention, because sometimes we're afraid to give access to our staff. Okay. So the user, which is a teacher in this instance, of course, after you have imported or manually added all your personnel, right? Some of you might have maybe just a handful of teachers. Some of us might have over 100. So it's depending on what way you would have your personnel, but you have to make sure that they're already in the system for this to work. You go to Organization, Access Group, and then add a teacher to this particular group and save the record. So I will show that here. Same thing, Organization, Access Groups, and you select the access group by double clicking it. At this time, you would be able to see if you're already giving access to any of the other teachers, or this might be blank for you now. And this is how you would add the particular teachers you want to give access to. You would click on the drop-down menu. This window pops. If you don't see the name of the teachers here, because we're using the database, it's alphabetical order, so the administration pops up first, but you would go to select from lister. At that time, the list of your teachers or personnel files would show. You would select your teacher. The name of the teacher would appear here. You would say add. The list would generate with the teacher's name, and please don't forget to save. So at that time, that means you've added the teacher to this access group. Then Now is the creation of the actual functional role, giving them the access to their particular courses. So same thing, everything under organization, but now this time you scroll down and you go to personnel. Then a submenu opens and you go to functional roles. This new tab opens. You click on new. You select the new personnel or the teacher, the class definition. Make sure that the functional role is for teacher and the school year. And I'm going to show you. So after you've done the new, just kind of like we did for the personnel, same thing. You're going to drop down the menu for the personnel. This will generate a list of all your personnel or teachers. If your teacher's name doesn't appear here, you would go select from lister and select it there. This would generate the teacher name here. Then you want to make sure that the right course or class is selected for this particular teacher. Same thing, you would click on the class definition drop-down menu, select the course. You always want to see, as I had mentioned, we're concentrating on the teacher access role, but you have the administrator, scorer. So you want to make sure that for this, it's for teacher access. And in my agency, we usually, all of our courses are year long, except for our CT, which are semester. And I tend to like to give our teachers access for the full year. That way I only have to do it once a year. However, if you have 9-week courses or you have quarter courses, you're able to select the time window that you want to give your teachers access to. That's your preference. And after you have done that, again, don't forget to save. And that would be the steps that you would need to do. So now let's say you wanted to confirm with that the teacher has done it or they can see their records. I'm going to show you. So hopefully we're not having any issue here. Okay. So then this is how the teacher would log in. After you have your personal record file for them, if you haven't set up their passcode, you're able to do so by going to the user and just creating, there's an edit button and you can add the passcode that you want. I usually give a generic and then they can change it. And then they would log in. Of course, the start page. And you could see they're all graded out. So the teacher actually has only access to their particular class or their particular students only. They can run their reports. We use a student gains. They can run a learning gains. They can run their attendance. They can also give attendance here only for their class. So, which I think it's pretty amazing. So that's how you would give access to your teacher. And this is what a functional role is. So I'm happy to share this with you and let me know, do you guys have any questions that I can answer? This presentation is in our agenda. So if you go there, you would be able to see this. But is there any questions I can answer? How long will we save recordings at PowerPoint? I think Nicole mentioned that it would be 6 months.
Correct.
Yes. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Luke.
Fabi, if you happen to have a copy of the PowerPoint handy,
yes,
and you can upload it in the file to the chat, that would be
absolutely
super.
That would be great.
We had a question. Can I just ask it real quick? I just want to make sure I give them the right answer.
Of course.
If they look for their teachers in the lister and they don't find any there, that means they have to create that personnel account first, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. There's how do we create a TE username and password for instructions? Was that the same question, Delfino? No, right? That's a different one.
Yeah, it leads into that.
It's almost
question.
Right. So Right, so you would have to go to your agency and then down to users. You would add the user in for that lister, and then you would be able to give the teacher their password and username. It's not in the agenda. I uploaded it yesterday, but I'm gonna put it right here for you guys.
I have a quick question.
Yes, of
I
course.
had who the delete one. Go ahead.
We have a separate sheet that was generated from Sacramento and for them to enter all their attendance. I send it to them. I have it on a shared drive. They put in the attendance and then I check it for correctness and I enter the hours in TOPS Pro. Once I enter into TOPS Pro, is there a way of printing out the attendance for their signature, for the teacher's signature?
Sure. Like a monthly report? Do you do it on a monthly basis or a weekly basis?
Monthly.
Okay, so you could do like a class hours report or a monthly attendance report. And then there's, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there's a place for a teacher's signature. It was designed exactly for what you're describing.
Oh,
How
excellent.
do I get to being able to print the monthly report?
Is it under reports?
Reports demographics.
Demographic?
And then they have total student hours, total class hours, instructional hours, and you can set a date range for it. So
Great.
Instructional hours. Thanks to Shaw.
We have a question from Ashley. Is this the same as editing the access under the user itself, or does this serve another purpose as well? Ashley, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe explain a little bit of what you mean by the question?
Sorry if there's a lot of background noise, but
No.
basically what I'm asking is the way you went through and created it through the organization and then access groups and then proceeded to go personnel and then the functioning roles, is that serve the same purpose as just going to organization and then users and then editing it from the actual like personnel record? Or does this serve another function?
I love it. So this is how we know you are a user. Absolutely. So that would be another way you could do it. Yes, same way.
Okay, I was just curious if there's something that I was missing that makes these two different functions or if it was the same thing.
No, just, when I first started doing this seemed, I wasn't too familiar with the system. So, it was the easier way. So that's how I tend to present it, but no.
No, this is a good way to kind of double check to be more specific as to what teachers have access to. Because it is easy to overlook stuff in the other screen when you're setting up teachers for stuff that you don't want them to have access to.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Ashley. Linda, after you enter the hours, close the screen and now open it again and the button to print and sign will show. Oh, thank you, Linda. Marilyn, you can give teacher access, but if they are not assigned to a class, what does that give them access to? Well, yes, absolutely nothing, right? So you always have to make sure that the teacher is assigned to the class. Absolutely. So we have users here. So thanks for checking. Yes. So that's why you have to make sure that your files have been imported in order to do this. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Delfino.
I know I'm on the panel, but I've never understood this correctly. If the test is not assigned to a specific classroom, that student will still populate in that teacher's class because of their registration, correct? Or their enrollment in that class.
Class enrollment,
Correct.
yes.
Great. All right, I'm
Excellent.
looking at the clock and I think we have to roll. I put a couple links in the chat and there are two presentations, one yesterday and one later this morning about user access that you might want to check out the recordings for yesterday, or if you can add it to your schedule at 10:30 today, more on access groups. Next up, we have Lydia's going to share with us about the ad hoc NRS tables. Go ahead, Lydia.
Probably helps if I unmute myself first. Presenting 101, right? All right, so the ad hoc reports are fantastic, and they are found under the federal reports and then the ad hoc NRS crosstabs. And so for those of you who are users, while I wait for TE to catch up, you will be very familiar with the generality of the general settings. So you just scroll down a little bit, and for the California users, you'll recognize the CAPE program area general setup. But if you're not from California, then let's go ahead and get rid of this. And let's put in some educational results on that one. And then over here, let's go ahead and pick program and generate. And this is a great report, excuse me, especially for administrators, so that they can do a couple of things. Number one, see where they're doing at the end of the program year with regards to how have their teachers, number one, been filling out their update records correctly in comparison with certificates, because I ran the educational results. So if we're looking at CTE programs and certificates, in our agency, we have records of that. We have records of occupational skills licensure and certificates. So we would be able to quickly go through here and see if they match up. And then two, that would tell us two things. Do our instructors need more training in filling out our paperwork, our required paperwork correctly? That's an admin decision. So, and then also, if everything is matching up, awesome. Kudos for our teachers, kudos for our admin. That's beautiful. And then also, with regards to sites, if I wanted to pull out our medical CTE versus our non-medical CTE, I would have that opportunity to run this by our non-medical site, choose the same categories because there's a plethora of categories to choose from. And again, look at just how those certificates are doing. So this is an amazing and diverse report for decision-making purposes, as long as you know what data you're looking for. And then two, if I wanted to drill down to one of the monitors, I would have that opportunity to do that on a much more deep level and see how am I doing with testing, how am I doing with program years population. But it depends on, again, knowing what data you're looking for. So that is one of their CASAS more recent reports. And one of the things that my administrators have been asking for and looking for in comparing with the other data that we have available. And so this is one of the, like I said, the ad hoc NRS crosstab report and how we've been using it down at Grossmont. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can get some feedback. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take those questions. But it is a really great report as far as using it to drive some decision making and what is needed as far as training is concerned, and how we're doing with regards to certificates and licensures, especially for the CTE program.
Thanks, Lydia.
Uh-huh.
We had one of the administrators in the session yesterday about TE strategies for administrators. Jody Slider from About Students Consortium, she shared how she used that report when she was trying to communicate with administrators who were in WIOA Title I programs. And their focus is very much CTE. And she went out and dug up data about their agency, about what percentage, which was in the 72% of their students were English language learners. And so in addition to providing career training, they needed that language skills too. And it resulted in $1 million grant for that consortium. So learning how to use these reports gives the data manager the ability to communicate with your administrator and even make helpful suggestions about trends and analysis. And that's something that your administrators will lean on you and look to you for that kind of guidance. Just a tip there for you. Job security.
Well, and there are so many different options. And until you go in there and you explore those options, you won't know just how dynamic that report is. So I encourage the data managers to go in there and just explore that report.
Lots of values, over 50 in there. Okay, Delfino's up next. Thank you. He's
Okay.
going to share with us about the different ways to navigate and drill down.
Yeah, sorry. So I jumped in just to kind of get going quickly here. So I quickly just went to reports, data management, and NRS data integrity. And I'm going to run this report, but one of the things I want to teach you guys is how to use this navigator over here. So you can run this data integrity for individual students. Say you have a student that you know should have a pay point and it's not coming up and you can't figure out why. Deselect them all and select that one student. But we're going to do a specific class. So I'm going to go to class instances. I'm going to deselect all of those classes. And I'm going to look at this ESL intermediate class and only this class. It'll also make it a little bit quicker for us to generate our data. We're not pulling the whole student population. So again, you can go through this to see the different options or different aspects of this report. But one of the things that catches my eye is we have a student that has 3 periods of participation, and I want to figure out why. So I'm going to click on that number, and it gives me very basic information, just that student's name, really. So that's not really helpful to me yet. So I'm going to click back to this result, to this report. Then I'm going to right click, and Lydia talked about this, and I'm going to drill down to the NRS monitor. So I'm going to right click and then select NRS monitor. And now it gives me a lot more information about that one student. It tells me that it shows me the 3 different periods of participation, the dates of attendance of those periods of participation, and we can see they're all just 1 days, and then the number of absences in between each period of participation. And obviously, if it goes over 90, you're going to start a new period of participation. So the student came, took a test, did 0 hours, and so the next time they came to take a test, probably to re-enroll, 107 days later, they had to start a second period of participation. And so the NRS monitor is really helpful for drilling down into that specific data. We, again, did a session yesterday, which goes into a little bit more detail, but right now we're running out of time. So are there any questions?
Actually, Delfino, we have until 10:15, and we only have a few more things to share, plus the
good.
game show questions. So you are right on track. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Any questions on the drill downs? It's kind of a nifty way to see your data and maneuver around.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is by using your navigator here, I can go back to that same menu. I can select something else. Like, let's say I want to look at which of my students, let's say, don't have a pre or a post test. I still have that NRS monitor up, so I can refer back to that if I need to, and I can go back to my report if I needed to. So this is also a very helpful way to go back and forth.
Great. And is it possible to, if you're looking at this report, to save it in a different format or export it? Can you show how to do that?
Absolutely. So let's say that I want to check on my students that have less than 12 hours, and I'm going to check on them in a week. So I want to save this list. I can keep this session, and it'll allow me to save it. Oh, I logged out of it. Sorry. I can also export that list. This button will light up when we get there. But again, I can refer back to that session that I had earlier. But I can export that. And also, if I go to reports and I go to reports manager, it'll generate all the reports that I've pulled up in recent history. And so I'll be able to look at those. And obviously, you can expand your parameters for other years. If you don't want to look at this year, you want to pull up a report that you did last year. But this saves all of your recent reports for you. So I can always go back and say, well, okay, on June 18th, I know I worked on my DIR. What was my data like then? And I know I've fixed it since then. Has anything improved? So you can compare your 2 reports that way.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? I'm looking in the chat. This is definitely a TE tip to know how to get into the level of detail of data, especially California agencies. You'll find when you're looking at the payment points report and you want to drill down and you want to see the matching pre and post tests. This is a great way to do it. Also includes the number of hours that are shown, which is very helpful.
And you combine all these tips that you heard today, right? And I can create a second page and I can compare my DIR from today from the one I pulled last week side by side, and it makes it so much easier. Also, we mentioned it earlier, I'm not sure if people here caught it, but if you want to sort by let's say first gender, and then we want to sort by native language, you hold down your control button once I've selected gender, and you select right here. And now Janice was mentioning it in the chat. Now we have a hierarchy. So first it'll go by gender, and then it'll go by native language. So I'm not sure if you guys caught that or not.
Beautiful.
All right, I'll stop sharing.
I think there's a question for you, Delfino. Do we need to keep session? Do we need to keep session every time we generate a report?
No, that's up to you and how you want to use it. I mean, when I first started, I would just print it out and highlight the date and thumbtack it to my wall so that I could physically look at it. So you don't need to do that every time. Your data it's constantly updating as you're fixing it, adjusting it, manipulating it, whatever you want to call it. And it's just a good way. What I like to do is if I know I have an issue with, let's say I have 30 students who don't have a post test, but I know they have a test, I go into the test and I fix what I can and I adjust what I need to adjust. And then I'll go back and regenerate my DIR to make sure that what I'm doing is having an effect, or else I'm wasting my time. And if it's not having an effect, then I call 1-800-255-1036, option 2. I call tech support. But no, yeah, but that's how I check. And so that's why I like having an older version. Even if I print one out every day or I'm saving it every day, at least I know that what I'm doing is working, and I can show my supervisors, hey, here's progress, we're working on it. So for me, it's helpful.
Excellent. And I think there was a tip shared, I can't remember if it was Lydia or it might have been Scott Gutman, one of our tech support folks, about the importance of keeping a log, keeping paper records. I used to keep a 3-ring binder. Lydia's nodding. Go ahead.
Yeah, keeping those logs is so important, especially if you are importing and exporting, which is in another session, but keeping a log, keeping track of what you are doing, so that if you have questions, if you make a boo-boo, you know which one it was when you did it, so that, you know, those logs are so important, especially whether you're a small agency or a large agency or a medium agency. Staying organized is key. It is so key. Yes, most definitely. That was me, by the way.
Perfect. You know, this group has been great. I've enjoyed sharing. I want to thank my presenters, but before we go, I do have a kind of a treat planned. We have a couple of questions for you, the audience, because we think that there's a chance that there might be a few of you out there that want to tackle a tricksy question. All right, anyone up for that? It'll only take a couple minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you're ready? Let me go ahead and I'm going to read it aloud and I'm going to post it in the chat. And then why don't you, if you think you happen to know the answer, to go ahead and you can either type it in the chat or probably there's enough people doing it that way. So question number 1, let's say there are 3 students who have attendance hours, but you can't get that next assigned test to generate. They're actively enrolled in a class with hours, program enrollment, and when you go into TE, you still get that report message about can't display data that meets specified criteria. Anybody have any idea what could be wrong? Think about that. Read it again, it's in the chat.
It's not in the chat, Janice.
Oh, I didn't hit return, hang on. Wait. There we go. Thanks.
Too low score, program enrollment. Let's see.
No, it's not that. Keep going. Guess. Nope, they've got hours. It's to do with the way something's set up. Ooh,
No.
Andrew's getting closer. It's not the instruction.
No instruction, no pretest.
Actually, I think.
Instance. Diana.
What about the instance?
There's your answer. The classes were not marked with an instructional program. In this particular agency, they had CTE and IELCE classes that were mixed with ESL and with career tech ed. And they weren't sure how to mark it, so they didn't mark it, and then they forgot, and then they never marked it. So it wouldn't come up in the next assigned test for those ESL students that needed to take their post-test. Yeah, it was kind of like a typo. Very good. Those are good answers. Want to try another one? This one's tricksy. I think you'll like this one. In TOPS Pro Enterprise, I'm going to put it in the chat this time. Hang on one sec. There we go. What's the difference between disabling a user account and suspending a user account? What's the difference between
that's a good one.
disabling and suspending?
That's a really good one.
I'll tell you, it went all the way through all the emails of everybody in tech support before we finally got the answer.
Gary,
We
when
stumped
is the-
Delfino with this one yesterday.
Stacy says, is disabling
is
more
it?
permanent? Nothing's permanent in TE. You can always undo it. You know, you can call tech support or get in there. That's Gary Soon saying one is done by TE and the other is done by the Gary Soon, you win the bagel and a free coffee. That is absolutely correct. That is exactly, here, let me post the long answer in there. The answer is that TE can sense that something's wrong. You know, if someone's been trying too many times to hack the password, and that's a suspension. Whereas the data manager, if let's say your teacher is on sabbatical and you want to temporarily disable that account, that's something that the data manager can do. But a suspension is something that's done by the TOPS Pro Enterprise software. Very good.
Yeah.
Very. Let's see. A silly
Gary's-
question. This is a silly question that we always throw around at CASAS. What time of day? Everyone knows we're in the Rolling Hills database, right? And it refreshes itself at a certain time back to its original state. So what time does the Rolling Hills demonstration database refresh every day? Little known fact. Michelle, midnight? No. It would be obvious to be midnight, but no, it's not obvious. So here we go. Anybody have any ideas? 5? No? Wow, it's a crazy guess because it's hard to guess.
Is it, remember our programmers are in Romania, or right?
Some of our servers are on the East Coast and the programmers are in Romania. So we do kind of have a whole global presence, but
When Richard hits the button.
That was my favorite answer right there.
Galena, Linda,
Yeah, 4
excellent.
a.m.
It's exactly at 4:10 in the morning. That's perfect. Thank you so
Wow.
much. Last question, and this is more of a tricksy one. I apologize if you're not from California because you'll look at me and go, what is she talking about? But there's a certain term that we get in California, which is called an incomplete outcome data set. What is it? And how do you find it in a report?
Define an incomplete outcome data.
Incomplete outcome data set. What's it relate to? Anybody have any?
One or more missing, NRS monitor, drill down. Do I need to call tech support to install?
Really?
Unplug your computer.
Okay, here we go. Elsa Castanon, she's close. It has to do with EL Civics. Very good. Galena, right? Missing a post-test. Right. So an incomplete outcome data set, when you have a student who's completed a COAP, in order to get their California payment point, they need to have a data set, which is a pre and a post in ESL. And it doesn't have to have a skills gain on the post test, but it has to at least be there. All right, anybody know which is my favorite report for finding out which one is? Quick, give me a list of all my incomplete outcome data sets.
Which one?
Which one? Are we running out of time here? Let me just cut and paste.
Does it have to do with
Someone keeps changing my
auditing?
everyone button, sorry. There it is.
What
When
is
you
it?
run the California Payment Points report, you don't just get one report, you get 4. So I think it's number 2 in the list is called the Payment Points Summary Audit. And that one, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can actually see a list of the ones and you can click into it. As Delfino mentioned with the drill down to see which students are affected by it and bring up a monitor and see how many hours it's been since they had their pre-test, etc. Oh, and Gary's even got the code number ELCAAD17.
Wow.
Wow.
There's no way you had that memorized, Gary.
Go ahead and unmute. Thank you, Gary. Soon we're going to be talking to you later this afternoon when we talk about TE innovations. We're about out of time. I want to say thank you so much, and let's keep recording until I get this on. Thank you to Lydia Jones, to Fabiola Epperly, to Delfino Murillo, Luke for being in the background there answering questions, and to our participants. Wait, there's an extra slide I'm supposed to share. Hang on, my bad. Share screen. Share screen. We finished the crosstab report, and there's a when it's time for you to go ahead and rate the session. This is where you go in Whova. You can click on that button. Give us your feedback. We appreciate it very much. I'm going to say thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yes.